Manx Radio's Update with Beth Espey.
Well, first, good evening. Welcome to Update here on Manx Radio, where we'll take you through some of the day's main news before 5:30. Coming up, we'll have details of two high-profile court stories that have been in the headlines today. We'll hear from the newly appointed Treasury Minister, Chris Thomas, speaking just days after stepping into the role following Dr Alex Allenson's sacking. Also tonight, the company behind a proposed major wind farm between the island and northwest England has pulled out of its plans. We'll bring you the latest on that. As reports of social media scams continue to rise, we'll have some practical advice from the island's Director of Cybersecurity. And later, how a charity heart screening event on the island helped save the life of a Manx netballer. All that, the weather, the traffic and the travel as well. And if you'd like to get in touch, 166 177. We'll start with a roundup of the day's main news headlines with Siobhan Fastamai.
Fastamai, a man described as possibly the most prolific drug dealer the island has seen, has today been jailed for 20 years. Jamie Mark Smith was sentenced at Douglas Courthouse for a number of serious drug offences, with officers saying the island is a safer place with him behind bars for a significant period. A local woman who violently shook her infant son, causing irreversible brain damage, has been sentenced to 30 months in prison. She's not been named to prevent identification of her son, who cannot be named for legal reasons, but she pleaded guilty to causing grievous bodily harm last year. A netball player and coach on the island is encouraging anyone who's eligible to sign up for a free heart screening event hosted by Craig's Heartstrong Foundation. When Molly Wallace was 18, a large hole was discovered in her heart, which required 2 rounds of surgery.
Anyone that I see, anytime that I see them putting up their screenings, like on Facebook, I share the post. I'm like, please go. Like, in all honesty, it saved my life.
And a fresh yellow weather warning for coastal overtopping has been issued for tomorrow. It will come into force at midnight and remain in place until 4 p.m. Further afield, Greenland's Prime Minister says he's ready to negotiate a better partnership with the US.
We are ready to cooperate more in economics, in other areas, but that's something we have to talk about in mutual respect.
It's after Donald Trump agreed a deal on Arctic security last night with NATO's Secretary General. There could be a way back to Westminster for potential Labour leadership hopeful Andy Burnham. Suspended Labour MP Andrew Gwynn has quit his Greater Manchester seat on health grounds, triggering a by-election there. And vampire horror Sinners has set an Oscars record. It has 16 nominations for the Academy Awards in March, more than any other film ever. There are your headlines. We'll have your news in full at 6.
Thank you very much indeed, Siobhan. Now the weather brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. A yellow weather warning, as Siobhan mentioned, for coastal overtopping. That comes into effect at midnight until 4 p.m. tomorrow. It is, again, the usual places, those exposed coastal roads and promenades, the risk of seawater and slight debris. There will be that high tide a little bit later. So that's going to be the main time for that. Remaining cloudy with outbreaks of rain generally then this evening. It will become more persistent early tonight before clearing away overnight into tomorrow. Fresh to strong east or southeast winds and a maximum temperature of around 9. Then tomorrow, a dry and bright start. Cloud, though, will increase. Cloud will increase through the morning. A few outbreaks of rain later in the afternoon, and those winds again will be quite strong. Top temperatures of around 9.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
It's coming up to 4 minutes past 5. A man described as possibly the most prolific drug dealer the island has seen has today been jailed for 20 years. Jamie Mark Smith was sentenced at Douglas Courthouse for a number of serious drug offences. Following the sentencing, Detective Inspector Jamie Tomlinson of the Serious and Organised Crime Unit issued this statement, which has been voiced by Lewis.
Operation Vineyard targeted Smith and his criminal associates. I'm extremely pleased that the courts have imposed such a significant prison sentence in respect of Jamie Smith, who was the head of an established organised crime group here on the island. I do not exaggerate when I say that he is possibly the most prolific drug dealer the island has seen. We know he started dealing in his latter teenage years, and he's not stopped since, apart from a period in custody for similar offences. As soon as he was released from prison, he carried on where he left off. We know this because he said it himself. As the court heard, he was a career drug dealer who believed that he would not be caught due to his network of associates. He believed that because he did not touch the drugs, he would evade prosecution. Upon a significant seizure being made and persons being arrested, we established he would be busy planning his next importation. His arrest represents a major success for the island, as there's no doubt he would have continued to bring Class A and Class B controlled drugs into the community on a frequent and large scale, exploiting the vulnerable and profiting from their harm. Operation Vineyard progressed through several phases, and on each occasion Smith remained involved, orchestrating criminal activity from a distance and using others to carry out his instructions. We also know he was in command of his street dealers and his customers around the island. He built close working relationships with Merseyside criminal associates, including individuals he had previously served time with. One such associate, Liam Dunn, is currently serving a 12-year sentence on the island. Smith boasted about lavish holidays and bragged about making thousands of pounds a week. He was also prepared to intimidate and threaten violence in order to undertake his criminal activity. The island is a safer place with him behind bars for a significant period. This long-running operation has resulted in multiple individuals being charged with offences relating to this organised crime group overseen by Smith. I would like to add my sincere thanks to the officers engaged in this operation and the prosecution team, who worked tirelessly and professionally to achieve these outcomes. Their commitment and attention to detail has been reflected in the sentences imposed.
Lewis Foster reporting. It's 6.5 past 5. So just a warning ahead of this next story that it does contain information which you may find distressing. A local woman who violently shook her infant son, causing irreversible brain damage, has been jailed following a case described by police officers as one of the most difficult investigations they've ever dealt with. Siobhan has this report.
The mother has not been named to prevent identification of her son, who cannot be named for legal reasons. In December 2022, a 3-month-old baby boy was presented to medical professionals at Nobles Hospital in a life-threatening state. He was given emergency medical treatment and then flown to Alder Hey Children's Hospital for specialist care. An investigation commenced and both parents were arrested. However, as the investigation progressed and further evidence was gathered, police heavily suspected that his mother had shaken him a number of times, causing irreparable damage to his brain. Last year, she pleaded guilty to causing grievous bodily harm and has since been sentenced to 30 months in prison. The Isle of Man Constabulary, Manx Care and Social Care worked together to ensure the safe collection of evidence and safeguarding requirements were achieved by all agencies. After prolonged hospital treatment at Alder Hey and much to the amazement of medical teams and police, the baby boy didn't die of his injuries. He was placed with a foster mother who has cared for him to this day and intends to continue to look after him moving forward. The boy has sustained life-changing injuries and will always require specialist medical care. Detective Chief Inspector Michelle Maddox, who headed the investigation with the assistance of specially trained detectives, said, "This is one of the most difficult investigations I've been involved in. Not only was the investigation complex in terms of securing the evidence, but also because the child was healthy before he sustained the injuries caused by his mother, which is something very emotive. The lady who has fostered the child is a hero in my eyes. Without her, the child would not have progressed the way he has, and I want to personally thank her for her commitment and love she has given to him." She added, "I want to urge any parent that may be struggling with a new baby to seek help before matters go too far and irreparable damage is done." Social Care and Manx Care both provide services that support parents and families, and there is no shame in asking for help or recognising that you may need it.
Siobhan Fletcher reporting. If you've been impacted by anything you heard in that story and you need support, you can find it at manxradio.com/community/support. There is a link on the website. It's coming up to 5:10, so it's fair to say there has been quite a lot happening in government this week, all beginning on Monday when the Chief Minister, Alfred Cannon, announced a reshuffle of his cabinet changes, which included relieving the Treasury Minister, Dr Alex Allinson, and Infrastructure Minister, Dr Michelle Haywood, of their duties. So stepping in to replace Dr Allinson is Douglas Central MHK Chris Thomas, an appointment which comes just weeks before the next budget is due to be unveiled. Mr Thomas has been talking to Phil Gaughan.
Well, it's quite close to a budget. budget, so put a lot of people to some extra work. So in that sense, I was surprised. But I have talked to the Chief Minister. I've always said, if you want me back, it's on this basis. And so in that sense, I'm not surprised. It's not, firstly, it's going through sort of things in January, things in February, things in March. And then beyond that, we've got the general election, and ultimately we're people's representatives, spending people's money, providing public services to people we represent. And so therefore part of the next month is preparing for the election. But what I said in Tynwald is that there's still so much that needs to be done in the next few months, and I'm pleased to come back to work with the Chief Minister, the rest of the ministers, House of Keys colleagues, to do what we can in the time available.
It's not long enough to make a real difference, is it?
I think you'll find it is. I think in those 8 months we'll have to deal with the healthcare situation, and the Treasury's got a big role in that. I think you'll find that we have to deal with capital projects, choosing, explaining to the public what happened on the promenade, what happened in Liverpool Forum and its ferry terminal, unveiling the cost of these schemes, choosing between projects in the future, unveiling the cost of all of these projects in the future. That there are some pretty significant moments even in the next 6 or 7 months. Government tends to speed up before an election, and I do think there will be decisions made. Ultimately, it comes down to 2 or 3 very simple issues. One of those is that we've got fewer reserves now, effectively, than politicians had 25 years ago, or even 10, 15 years ago. And we've got to deal with that and manage the expectations and work out how to deal with that. Secondly, connectivity on and off the island, especially by air, is worse than it was 15 years ago, and we've got to deal with that. Thirdly, there are all the issues that come from the changing demography of the island, and we've got to deal with that. I could carry on listing them.
That is the Treasury Minister, Chris Thomas, talking to Phil there. So as I mentioned, the budget is coming up in February. We will be doing the live interview with the Minister, Chris Thomas. It's happening on Friday, the 20th of February. Tomorrow, there will be tickets. They're not for sale or anything, but just to reserve your seat. We're holding it at Lukey's Bar once again. So if you'd like to come along and put your questions directly to the Minister, then you'd be very welcome. 12 minutes past 5, and a UK MP says the company behind plans for a large wind farm between the Isle of Man and his constituency of Fylde has withdrawn from the project. Andrew Snowden has provided an update on the Morgan offshore wind project, as Sean Cowper reports.
You might remember receiving a leaflet through your door towards the end of 2022 asking for your views on the Morgan wind farm. The site would have included 96 turbines between the island's coastline and northwest England. The steam packet company was among those to express concern over the proposals, with a ferry operator describing the safety of navigation of its ships, particularly in rough weather, as a key concern. With the development covering the steam packet's routes to Heysham and Liverpool, the company also warned that extra sailing distance would lead to increased fuel costs and greater CO2 emissions. Chris Thomas MHK, who was the Infrastructure Minister at the time of the consultation, told Manx Radio the development could have huge implications for the island.
Well, firstly, there will be huge implications for steam packet routes. There are also huge implications potentially for other things that affect us, like how we use our territorial seas. So the government's been aware of this process for some time, and the Chief Minister's written a letter which officers around me worked on, and I worked with him on, and that was sent at a very high level in the UK months ago.
In a statement on his website, Mr Snowden says this is significant news, and it throws a very large spanner into the works of the Morgan and Morecambe cabling corridor. For years, residents have been told that digging up beaches, tearing through countryside, harming wildlife and putting businesses at risk was all unavoidable and necessary. It now appears that when the subsidies didn't stack up, the project collapsed. That speaks volumes. He went on to add, "I will continue fighting this proposal at every turn, alongside local residents, councillors, parish councils and community groups who've worked tirelessly together to protect Fylde." During the same consultation, Manx residents were also asked for their views on the Morecambe project, a smaller development closer to the English coastline. Mr Snowden says the future of that development and whether it's financially viable without the Morgan project is unclear.
That is Sean Cowper reporting.
Manx Radio Travel, serviced by Quayside Tyres.
As far as we're aware, nothing to report on the roads from the police, which is always good. Some of the main things to look out for in Castletown: there are temporary lights on Alexandra Road. That's 24 hours a day. That's to carry out work on gas main issues. In Ballasalla, still Orrisdale Road closed for resurfacing work, and the temporary lights on the St Mark's Road. That is for work on the pavements. It's just north of the Phildraw Road turn. In Colby, temporary lights still on the main road near the pub. That's for patching works. And until the end of next month in Sulby, the Clanet Road is closed between Sulby and Sandergate, again for resurfacing. Looking down at the airport, all pretty good down there. The steam packet this evening is okay. The Manxman due into Douglas at around about 5:45. It's scheduled to head out again at 7:15. But then tomorrow's sailings from 8 a.m. from Douglas are at risk. That's because of the weather forecast tomorrow. A decision will be made on them by 6 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Manx Radio Travel, serviced by Quayside Tyres. Call Quayside Tyres on 664417 to book your free vehicles winter check, so your vehicle is safe for you and other road users.
You're listening to Update. It's just gone 5:15. Well, remain vigilant is the message from the Isle of Man government following an increase of scams on social media. Recent cons include an AI-generated video of the Chief Minister endorsing a financial product, amongst other investment opportunities, and a false quote attributed to Jane Poole Wilson MHK. The Director for the Cyber Security Centre on the island, Mike Haywood, has been talking to Darren.
As time has progressed, the scams are now much more tailored to the Isle of Man and will feature names and places of companies or entities that are recognisably based in the Isle of Man. So they're going to sound or look a little bit more plausible, which can sometimes lead people to feel that they maybe are legitimate. But again, we're just asking people to sort of remain cautious and be vigilant, because it's possible now for people to make very convincing looking scams quoting local companies or local events that may just be something that you are individually interested in, which might lower your sort of like awareness or your suspicions. You know, it is the case that these scams are being tailored now much more specifically to the Isle of Man, and that's why we're asking people to remain cautious and not click on links, and to go back to some trusted source rather than just click on something that's appeared in their Facebook post.
What role do you think AI is playing in scams at the minute as well?
It's lowering the barrier to entry for criminals to create more plausible looking schemes. So it's making it easier to create videos that appear to be plausible of well-known or high-profile individuals, and then linking that potentially to offers or investment schemes. So we would urge people to be cautious of posts or adverts that use the names and images of politicians because of that increasing use of AI. It's certainly the case that this is not a problem that is going to go away. It's more than likely that as AI develops, the use of AI for these type of means will also increase, which is why we're effectively warning people to be cautious and to be wary and to remain vigilant.
That's Director for the Cyber Security Centre here on the Isle of Man, Mike Haywood. You can find out more details as ever on the Manx Radio website. Coming up to 18 minutes past 5, and the Isle of Man budget is usually one of government's best kept secrets. But this week, actually, we've seen a few hints dropped in Tynwald with everything that's been going on. Christian is just here with me now. And Christian, you've been looking through what some of it might mean. So just tell us, first of all, what's caught your attention with this?
Yeah, fast to my Beth. So, like you say, it's quite unusual, actually. During this week's sitting, Chief Minister Alfred Cannon spoke about a substantial rise in the personal income tax allowance. And while no figures were confirmed, the comments alone have meant that we can take a closer look at some of the numbers. So before we begin, though, it is very important to note that all of this is prediction and number crunching. It's not confirmed or official by any means. And between now and budget day, things could change and any giveaway could be offset elsewhere.
OK, so taking that into account then, what is the analysis that you've done suggested?
A lot of it centres on one figure, £10 million. The Chief Minister suggested government could inject around £10 million into the economy through the tax system rather than relying on grants or support schemes. Now, Treasury's own modelling lets us make an educated estimate of what that could mean in practice.
OK, so presumably, Christian, you've done the calculations, you've got those to hand. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so Treasury figures show that for every £1 increase in the personal allowance, that costs just over £10,000 in revenue. If you divide that into a £10 million pot, it points to an increase of roughly £1,000, which is a fairly politically neat figure, I suppose, but it means the allowance would rise from £14,750 to £15,750 from April.
If that did happen then, how much difference would that actually make to people?
Yeah, so for someone paying the standard 10% rate, that's about £100 extra a year. For higher rate taxpayers at 21%, it's closer to £210. But personal allowance rises tend to benefit lower and middle earners most. Some part-time workers could even be taken out of paying tax altogether.
And again, we'll just remind you that we are talking about speculation based on what we know. But Christian, there have been suggestions we may see a personal allowance rise elsewhere as well.
Yeah, so a Tynwald committee last year warned allowances have stagnated this administration and actually urged the government to do a more strategic approach to increase them. So while nothing is confirmed yet, the signals are there. So now I guess all that's left for us to do is wait and see.
You love this, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You can find out much more on the Manx Radio website. There are handy graphs on there as well. So do take a look at that. Christian, thank you so much. 5:20, and a Manx netballer says a charity heart screening event on the island helped save her life. Molly Wallace attended the clinic organised by Craig's Heartstrong Foundation when she was 18, and it was there she was told she had a large hole in her heart. Ahead of the next round of screenings, Molly is urging anyone who's in the 14 to 35 age bracket to sign up.
When I went, I just went as somebody who always thought, oh, it will never be me. Like, I'm fine, I'm healthy, play sports, absolutely fine. Went in, had my ECG, and they just said there's a slight hiccup with it. We just need to double check it. So I went for the ultrasound of my heart, and a hole was found, quite a significant size that we didn't have a clue was there. You just think the worst straight away. Like, my younger sister had a heart murmur when she was born, so I'd never had anything. Like, from birth, it wasn't picked up. So I was 18 years old. Finding that out, you just freeze. So I was sent to Nobles, had some more tests done, and then sent over to the UK. And a lot of my tests and my operations were done in Liverpool Heart and Chest. I've had 2 surgeries on it. The first one wasn't so successful. So that was 3 months after my screening. It was done very, very quickly. That was in the October. And then my second operation was the following January. So I was under the UK hospital for a year once it was all complete, and then here for another 6 months. So 18 months in total, I was completely sorted and discharged.
When you think back to going for that screening test, how grateful are you that you did?
Extremely. Absolutely extremely. It's such a vital thing that the Isle of Man has. I would recommend any person between that age goes. Any time that I see them putting up their screenings, like on Facebook, I share the post. I'm like, please go. Like, in all honesty, it saved my life.
That is Molly Wallace talking to Lewis. You can hear much more about this in the Island Life programme, which is coming up at 5:30. It's called Craig's Legacy, How Craig's Heartstrong Foundation is Changing Lives. Now, a huge step forward for the Isle of Man is how a new learning disability and neurodivergent football team has been described. It was set up by Onken AFC last summer for children aged between 11 and 15, and the club coaches Ben Melling and Connor Thompson have been talking to Darren.
You know, this whole project came from Onken AFC, and we've got to give a big shout out to Brian Callow there for taking this project on. The young people that come kind of feel like they didn't quite fit into their football teams all around the island. You know, they had ability, they had footballing sense, but for one reason or other, they weren't quite enough to make it to the team. So it's just a great opportunity for them to just put on a kit on and feel like they're a part of something. You know, it's unbelievable. So shout out to Brian Callow for getting that started, and I think his intention is to grow that across the island and get other teams on board.
Over the next 3 to 5 years, the plan is to spread it out, get a team up north, down south, one in east, one in west, then start doing little tournaments, like either 3-a-side, 5-a-side tournaments in between, building it up from there.
You mentioned about how it's important for them to feel like they're part of a team, and how important is that for the development of these kids as they grow older.
It's huge, isn't it? You know, it's this transitional age from primary school where you're kind of traditionally wrapped in cotton wool, and a lot of these young people have got sort of hidden long-term health conditions behind the scenes as well. So there's young people there who's got, you know, ADHD, or they might have a autistic spectrum disorder that might need a little bit more one-to-one coaching sometimes. Sometimes they come, they've had a hard week, it's been a hard day at school. I think Connor and myself do a fantastic job of recognising that, and of course we've got parents there and they're very supportive. And this transition from secondary school is massive for any kid, isn't it? You know, it's you're starting to form a bit of an identity there. So having this togetherness to be able to put on a shirt and be proud to wear this shirt and say I'm a part of something, you know, it's great. And you see the faces light up when they get the kit. Every Friday they're like, yes, coach, you know, and that's what we're there for. That's what we're, you know, here to do.
Isn't that brilliant? Ben Melling and Connor Thompson talking to Darren. Update Sport is brought to you by the Print Shed, and here is Rob.
Fast am I. We're going to stick with football because a late charge from FC Isle of Man wasn't enough as the Manx side fell to a 3-2 defeat at West Didsbury and Chorlton in the NWCFL Premier Division last night. The Island side's host led after 10 minutes thanks to a Caleb Parkinson strike and doubled their lead in the 20th minute through a Ben Elliott finish. A stunning long-range hit from Jack Bannister secured a third for the home team in the 73rd minute before FC Isle of Man got one back with 8 minutes to go through a Steve Whitley penalty. Another FC Isle of Man strike from Michael Williams in the second minute of second half stoppage time reduced the deficit again, but it couldn't stop the Ravens falling to a third straight league defeat. It'll be a quick turnaround for Rick Holden's side, who return to league action this weekend when they face South Liverpool at the Bowl on Saturday at 6 p.m. Manx Radio will be providing full live match commentary on our DAB and AM 1368 channels. Elsewhere, some of the Isle of Man's top darts players are preparing to take on in the 2026 Islands International this weekend. A squad of 20 local competitors, 13 men and 7 women, will contest the 4th edition of the competition in Ennis, the Republic of Ireland, on Saturday and Sunday this week. The event sees teams from the Isle of Man, Republic of Ireland, Jersey and Guernsey take part in a series of round-robin events and was first held in 2023. Well, during last year's tournament in Jersey, the Manx women's side went on to finish second and the men's team third in their respective tournaments. Due to storm disruption last year, the Isle of Man team was forced to play a mixture of in-person and remote matches, which took place using live feeds and scoring systems. You can view the full Isle of Man squad for this year's event at manxradio.com. And in cycling, it's been another positive day for Isle of Man rider Max Walker on day 2 of the Tour Down Under in Australia on the Men's World Tour. On stage 2 of the event earlier today, the Manxman helped EF Education Easy Post teammate Harry Sweeney to a 9th place finish. It's a second top 10 finish in 2 days for the team after another of Walker's teammates, Luke Lamperty, finished 10th on stage 1 on Tuesday. Tomorrow's third stage will involve a 140.8 kilometre route from Henley Bridge to Nairn.
Thank you very much indeed. You fancy doing that, Rob? Are you a bit of a cyclist? Could you...
I've taken a bit more of an interest. I did sort of consider the idea of getting involved, but I think I'd have to do a lot of work to try and get towards that level because it's so elite and so demanding as well.
Take your tricycle out, yeah?
It's a start.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much indeed, Rob. That is all from Update tonight. As I say, all tonight's top stories you can find on the Manx Radio website. Coming up next, it's that Island Life special programme with Lewis. It's called Craig's Legacy, how Craig's Heartstrong Foundation is changing lives. It's 20 years since Craig Lunt died, and the charity set up in his name has really done incredible things. So we'll be hearing more about that. At 6 p.m, Chris Kinney's here with Greatest Hits. It's a little light music with Morris Powell at 9, and then Ree is here with After Hours from 10. Whatever you're doing this evening, have a good one, and Update will be back at 5 p.m. tomorrow.